our chickens in before it's like
Yeah,
the dead
you
of
do.
night.
All right.
I'll watch your stories.
Here we are. This is Monday Night VFF. What day is this? 4th, 5th, 10th?
Fifth.
5th?
April 5th.
How'd that happen?
April 5th. Time keeps on slipping into the future.
Steve Miller Band.
There we go. So we are here tonight to discuss Beowulf, but one of our esteemed members has presented us with her own book called Fierce. Conquering the battleground between who you are and who you are destined to be.
It's actually Fierce.
Fierce.
Need a Spanish edition.
¿Por qué? Claro que sí. And if you haven't picked up that book, go to Amazon. Fierce. Caitlin A. Davis. It's awesome. That's all I can say. It's worth your time. It's worth your money and it's worth your time. What else can be said about a book being worth your money and worth your time? That's the highest praise I can give.
And 2 VFF members attributed to this book.
2 VFF members.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Go get it.
Go get it today. So let's get into Beowulf. Now, the initial reactions. Go for it. What are you guys mentioned them earlier. What are your initial reactions?
Challenging.
Listening to Seamus Haney's version is fairly easy.
Yep.
We downloaded the Hoopla, and we both listened to it, and I can follow along a lot better. But it is good to go back to Tolkien's version and just the local language.
It's interesting. So reading some of the forward, I'll be honest with when I read a book, which is funny because I wrote the forward for Fierce. Mm-hmm. I don't usually read the forwards. And the reason I don't is because I like the author to take me where the author wants to take me. I don't need the clue. I don't want the hint. I want to see if I can figure it out. Then I go back and read the forward and introduction, and then I'm like, oh, okay, okay. What did I miss something? And then I could pick back up on it. And then when I reread it, I can go through. And so it's like I want my first. I don't want people to tell me about this movie. I want to watch the movie and experience it, and then we'll go into the commentaries and the discussions and all that. So
you'd rather skip the abstract?
Yeah, go straight into it. What's the first word? So, and it's not going to be a secret after now, but one of the things that I do in my writing, and if anyone has read my writing long enough, is I usually start out with a word or a series of just a few words to set the tone. In the C.S. Lewis Sherlock Holmes fiction I'm writing, the stinging smell of sulfur hangs in the air. That's it. Period.
I love that.
That's just where I start. Or I'll start with something that says like sublime. Period. So you're like automatically your brain's searching for where am I, and then we jump into it. So I always try to set the scene with. The title, the first word are super important to me, that they connect and they create the bridge for the journey. So, when we get into what I love about what Tolkien does is Tolkien's interpretation is he's trying to directly interpret. His son said he was trying to get it as close as possible to what the translation actually was. Come on through.
I'm on cue every time.
Yeah.
As soon as we start.
Yeah.
Where Seamus Haney, he's more, how can this best be expressed to be understood? And so they had different motivations in their writing, which one's not better than the other. One's just
Is that more thought?
easier to comprehend. Here's the thing, if you're not equipped with the language skills of comprehending Victorian English, it's going to be difficult. Shakespeare's difficult if you don't understand the nuance of Victorian English. If you understand the nuance, it's extremely funny and it's thoughtful and it's thought-provoking and all the imagery works and it's not boring. However, if you don't know those things, when you get into Shakespeare, you're like, why are we reading this antiquated stuff? So it's all about the toolkit that you have. Seamus Haney makes Beowulf accessible to more people than Tolkien does. But doesn't that fit Tolkien?
Oh yeah.
He really wasn't personable anyway.
I wasn't surprised when I started reading it. I wasn't shocked by how it was. Definitely not.
You're like, this is Tolkien.
Uh-huh.
He's a curmudgeon. So there's a quick story. You can dichotomize Lewis and Tolkien. Os Guinness told me the story. You guys know who Os Guinness is?
No, tell me.
Os Guinness is a speaker who was a speaker with the ACA. He was one of the people that taught me over in Oxford. And he once gave a lecture, a friend said, and gave 42 notations during the speech and he gave them perfect quotations from other people's works. He had 0 notes. He gave 42 quotations from other people's works without a single note in front of him.
Wow.
Guys,
That's
brilliant. Brilliant. So Os Guinness says, not Os Guinness, John Lennox was in class with him. So that's another guy. So John Lennox says, I'm in class. He goes, and Lewis walks in. And I think Hooper talks about this as well. So I could have my stories mixed up. I've heard John Lennox tell stories, and so I could be amalgamation here. Forgive me. Lewis walks into class. He opens the door, and he begins to take his coat and hat off. And as he begins teaching. The moment he walks in, he begins teaching, taking his coat off and his hat off, sits down, takes his scarf off, teaches as he walks up to the front, gets in front of the lectern, speaks for 40 minutes, starts walking off the lectern, doesn't stop speaking, starts walking off the lectern, puts his coat and hat back on, and finishes with his last word, puts his hat on, and closes the door behind him.
That's awesome.
No questions?
And it was a
Q&A?
packed house. Every time Lewis went to speak, it was a packed house.
Wow.
There are notes where Tolkien went to talk, and there was 1 or 2 people in the audience to hear him give a lecture.
Wow.
That's the difference. One is jovial, one is more
Cold?
Saturnine, is the word that we would use there. The god Saturn, as opposed to that. So, all right. So Beowulf. I happened to download Beowulf online because when it comes to something like this, I actually want to be able to make notes because I started reading it, and it took me a while to get my Victorian legs under me. I'm not going to lie. And then as soon as I did, I was off and running. But I've been reading them simultaneously. I've been reading Haney's and Tolkien's at the same time, and it's really, really good. So, initial impressions about the book. What was it that jumped out at you? Why do you think that I'm having you guys read this? Or why am I saying, why do you think that this book means something? What is there to be gained from this book? Because I don't want you guys reading something just for fun. And the fact that you guys actually are reading this, that you trust me enough with your minds and with your time to read something that I am offering,
Wes is pushing it with this.
it's not lost on me that I know I'm asking you.
No, but it wasn't as when you see this, and then you read page 1, you're like, and you don't know that the rest is the commentary. You just start reading it, and you're like, "There's no way."
I know that I'm asking a lot of you on
And I
this,
trust you. So
but
here I am.
there it is. There's the trust, and I really appreciate that you guys are willing to take this risk because this is one of my favorite medieval stories of all time.
What if
It's
we don't
just-
like it?
You probably have poor taste. In literature.
That's funny.
All right, so
I haven't read enough to give an opinion yet. That's why I'm being quiet.
don't.
I need to get into it more.
Okay.
I don't
got
want to say
nothing.
anything yet. But.
Okay. So where do we find ourselves? Where do we find ourselves? Does anyone know who authored this?
No, right?
Nope.
No. No.
Unknown.
Unknown.
Anonymous.
Then why do we have it?
There must be something
Someone liked it.
in it that's important. People have gleaned from something.
There's probably some
Speaks to you.
archetypes in here, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are.
The aim.
This, every time I get back into it, I think of all he likes watching the series put out on Amazon and different places like about Vikings and things like that.
Oh yeah.
And such, and it's just reeks of all those various shows that you've watched. Vikings one, but there's another one. I forget now. I was reading the books that it was coming. The Lost Kingdom, I forget what all now, but all those.
If you want to read an interpretation of, or if you want to watch an interpretation of this, sort of a reimagining of it, The 13th Warrior with Antonio Banderas is a great movie. Now, what it does, I will tell you what it does, is it takes the supernatural out of the story and replaces it with natural phenomenon, which would be what would happen in a 20th century mind in the Enlightenment. It's like, let's take all the
You think it would taint it then to watch it?
No,
Okay.
because it's a really good interpretation.
Okay. What's it called?
The 13th Warrior.
Yeah, it is good.
Yeah, I've seen it many
So I
times.
watched it the first time with you, and I've seen it once or twice now. I've come back and
Okay.
watched it.
So Miriam, have you read this before before this group?
Beowulf, I had it back in college because
Oh, okay.
I went through back to my. I have all my lit compilation books, anthologies and such, and I found one with Beowulf in it, and I see my notes in there.
Oh,
and
so you
stuff like
definitely
that.
did
I took
read it
notes and
before.
stuff.
Okay.
But all I remember from that is that it was a slog, and it's like, oh my gosh, please, Dr. Nelson, can we get through this? And all this is interesting.
That's funny. Okay.
So Tolkien is, and I'm sad that Randy's not here because Randy is our Tolkien man,
I know.
but he is a Beowulfian scholar.
Really?
Oh.
Yes,
Wow.
and as you read
No wonder.
Lord of the Rings and you read Beowulf, you're going to go, hello, there's some things here that, okay, I know where you got that from. Or
It's gonna make sense.
it articulated itself out of him because he was so grounded in the archetypes of this. Beowulf, one interpretation is the bee thief. Do you guys know of any thieves in one of Tolkien's first big books?
Little Bilbo.
Bilbo Baggins?
Bilbo Baggins was a thief.
He lives the thief.
I love Bilbo Baggins.
Beorn, the bear,
Sounds.
is an allusion to Beowulf.
Tolkien also loves the bees, doesn't he? Bee words, bee names, bee.
BB. You notice they don't have any batteries, or they don't have bee batteries.
I have noticed that.
It's comedian Dimitri who says that they don't have those because people think you were stuttering. I'd like some bee batteries. What kind of batteries? Bee batteries.
That's funny. Ooh. But
So full of jokes. I got jokes too, people.
he's in a good mood today, everybody. Wes has had a good day. Chicken's in his coop and he's happy.
Yeah. I'm just happy that people showed up and people are willing to read this. It makes me happy.
Trying
because-
to
I'm
read
actually
it.
kind of excited. Yeah.
I like
So-
a good challenge.
Now that you mentioned that, I've been working on this, working my way through it and stuff like that. And then this weekend, I really wanted to watch Lord of the Rings again. So I pulled out all three
Wow.
movies.
It's probably a
put them all in and
subconscious.
watched them all.
Very
You
good.
think it's probably a subconscious pulling, right?
It
12 hours.
is
Something like that. The last one's 3.5.
Yeah.
because it's, as C.S. Lewis says, it's not that we need to learn truth as much as we need to be reminded of truth.
Oh, for sure.
Now, there's something.
Hello.
Are you having a meeting?
Yes,
Is it a Drinklings meeting?
it is. Do you guys want to?
Well, it's,
We only have like 15 minutes.
Oh.
Like, she's always been interested.
Well, hi. But you can come in for a second and meet everybody.
Yeah.
Well, not everybody's here, but hi. I'm Wes.
I'm Katie.
What was it?
Katie.
Katie. Yeah. So you are welcome anytime.
Every Monday.
Every Monday at 7, it'll be here or the new location over in the Rice House. They're moving,
It's like right across the street.
so it's right across. So right where the yellow building is.
Caboose.
Yeah, so the house right there near that the St. Joseph thing. So, yeah, we study Lewis, we study Tolkien. We're actually doing Beowulf right now, and so we go over some philosophy and theology, and we just wrestled out. Please bring any heresy that you have, any thoughts you have. We just wrestle it out together. We don't necessarily try to come to answers. We just try to ask better questions. And we just wrestle things out here. But please stop by. If you want to leave your name and your email address, I can actually put you on the email list.
Whatever made you think we're here.
oh, awesome.
Oh, that is fantastic.
Our favorites.
Oh,
Oh, well, then you're in the right place.
And the philosophy department wanted to steal it.
Well, yeah, then you are definitely in the right place. Just I'm going to put your information in there. So yes, we've had this for about a year.
No, I think 2
Oh, it's
years.
going on 2 years. In the summer, it'll be 2 years that we've had
Do you
this.
meet during the summer?
Do what?
Do you meet during the
We
summer?
do. It's an abbreviated session, but we do a couple months. It depends on if we're here or not. Sometimes we travel, but
Oh, yay.
now I don't know. But so yeah, usually we spend a lot of time doing cultural stuff in sociological stuff. So kind of in the summer.
Sure.
So we do like
We just finished up Narnia. We did all Narnia.
yeah, we did all of Narnia over
We're like kind of fall
Yeah.
through the end of January.
And what did we do before this?
I don't know. We came in at Narnia. That's
No,
what
I mean Narnia was Narnia. Did we jump into Beowulf?
No, we did.
Flatlands or
No, Flatlands was before.
way ago.
Solzhenitsyn.
We did Solzhenitsyn's Nobel Peace Prize on Literature, and that took us about 5 weeks because it was so dense.
What's on top after Beowulf?
After Beowulf,
How we discussed it.
we haven't discussed it, but I'm leaning towards the introduction of Carl-Jung's archetypes because it is absolutely just brilliant to read, and I've been reading it, and I just can't stop, and it's just I'm just gorging myself on his language is so beautiful. He's a clinical psychologist, but he writes like C.S. Lewis, and it's just incredible to put those two things together. But we come together. Somebody has an idea, or if you said you write.
Yes, you do, right?
So here's the thing too. I have been wanting people to come and bring the stuff that they write, and then we critique it. And
We
like
also have an author who just
and right here,
published
she
her
just
book.
published her first book.
Perfect timing. Perfect segue. The plug.
There it is. So
I read this book. Like, what are you reading?
it's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
It's called Fierce.
Just came out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's what we're all about here. We just
Encouraging
come-
dreams, too.
Encouraging
I never
dreams.
thought I would write a book if that helps, but this group encourages that. Definitely.
So what's it about?
It's like a self-discovery book. It's like a
Conquering the
self-discovery
battleground between who you are and who you're destined to be.
Ooh, I
Yeah.
book. Yeah, all of these people actually played a huge role in that, I would say. It's definitely, and it's not like you feel pressure to write or to do something. It's just challenge. I feel like we come together and we challenge each other. It's like iron sharpens iron, So if you do want to write or you do want to do anything creative, we have tons of artists that come to this group and
A couple professors
couple
from
professors
Asbury.
that come, and so we just kind of challenge each other to do things.
And so we don't always agree.
Yeah,
and actually,
that's
there's some. It's not contentious, but we
Not
be
contentious,
like,
not heated.
yeah, I don't agree with that. Let's pull that apart. And so we just it's a lot of fun, and we grow together because not everybody has it all right.
Yeah, we're all just trying
So-
to figure it out.
Yeah, you have humility.
7 o'clock Monday.
7 o'clock on Mondays. So now that I have your y'all send an email out. I try to get it out on Sunday.
Sometimes
I
it's just loud.
I homeschool. I do some remodeling. We're starting a
farm.
homestead. I write academic papers.
So just depending on when it gets
Depending on if I can get a moment.
Depending on when his wife says, "Did you write that email?" Oh yes.
Yeah.
She's just about
Yeah.
to do that.
Sit for my phone.
So, but you'll get it, and then we decide as a group sometimes what we're going to read. If somebody's like, "Oh, I'd really like to read this," we take that under consideration, and we're like, "Okay, let's read it and get together."
I know what I want to read.
What do you want to read, Corey?
She wants to read Corey ten
The
Boom,
Hiding Place.
The Hiding Place.
Yeah.
We do mostly Lewis and Tolkien. We have in the past.
Inklings.
But, yes, inkling stuff. But we
We veer out
we
sometimes.
pepper in some stuff.
Yeah, we were there in Oxford, 2 years ago? And
Wait,
to the Burn Bay and got a picture under
Good
the-
for you.
really?
That's awesome.
This guy studied at Oxford.
I studied
so
there
we
in
were-
2018.
Yeah.
Oh, we might
I
have
was
been
gonna say you might have been there together.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's planning 22, 23 a year in Oxford.
Oh, that's awesome.
That would be awesome.
It will be the greatest year of your life.
That's awesome.
I
as long
can't.
as the England is back to normal.
As long as they're back to normal.
Wait, one more.
I never woke up every morning that I woke up in Oxford, I was like, I can't believe I'm studying here. I can't believe I'm studying here. I can't believe I get to go to the Bodleian. I'm in the Duke Humphreys Library. It's from 1400s.
Actually, I feel like Utah. What were we there right before we caught our train? What did they do? Oh, they opened the Tolkien exhibit, right? In the Bodleian. And they
We went to that.
So
Yes.
we were like the first group in. They like
Yeah. Right across the street from the
The
main
Sheldonian.
library, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right across from Sheldonian. That we tell all these guys it's like the most amazing Tolkien exhibit.
Oxford is the
ever
most
exists.
magical city I have ever been to. It's incredible. And I call it a thin place. I call it the place between the spiritual and the physical. Sometimes you waft in and out of those. There's something going on there that's just incredible. My wife and my kids, we moved there for almost a year while I studied. It was just worth every penny.
Yay.
Well, it sounds like you need to come back sometime.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely should.
It's time. Like, we talked about it all year long. We live in Florida, but we're just up for Easter.
Okay.
So, but you might be here part of summer too. So.
Okay. Awesome. Well, so nice to meet
We'd
you.
love to have you. And the owner of Drinklings actually is a co-founder, and he's here. And there's a couple people that are not here tonight. They're just out and about. So we run between 6 to 10 people a meeting, but it's an awesome 6 to 10 people.
No pressure to talk, though. I mean,
And how late do you usually run?
That depends. We
it's
You
usually
might just have to say, I gotta go to sleep.
yes.
it's usually 7, 8:30 are the set times.
Okay.
But sometimes we're slow to start, like today, and
And sometimes you get interrupted.
Sometimes, and then sometimes we go out in the back, and we're on the topic, and we also say bring your vices. So we'll go out and smoke a pipe or something out there and get into some big conversation. So that's up to you. No pressure on that. That just say
just Wes.
bring your personal heresies and bring your vices.
Someone's vices might give her an asthma attack.
Well, if that's the case, then we save the smoking. So
we have
ask-
more than one asthmatic here.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we were going to come for a drink, but it was better to come meet you guys. So.
There is drip coffee.
Well, I wouldn't count on that coffee. It's been sitting for a while.
Sour.
Okay. Well, she just saw the light. She was like, I think they're open. So.
I wish. He is not
Yeah.
a late opener. So it's open till 5 during the week, but and then Saturday till 3, I think. It was much shortened until recently, until school came back into session. So, yeah.
So if you want to get a head start on next week, Beowulf.
If you can come. Although it's not my choice. But that is his choice.
You know,
Very
you'll-
She just
excited.
laughed about Beowulf because her sister is at Wheaton College, and she's like, I gotta do my list. Every single option's gonna do Beowulf. I can't get away from it.
Oh, Wheaton's land of C.S. Lewis, that's for
Yes.
sure. I mean, are you a student at Asbury?
I am.
Okay. At the university or seminary?
The university.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
so
they've
you
got
know-
pretty good C.S. Lewis.
Do you know Devin Brown then?
Yes, I do.
He's a friend of ours.
Yeah. He came
So-
in with my class. I graduated in 2000. So, he came in with my class, and I cannot believe he's
I
still
wonder if he'll
there.
give extra credit for being a part of VFF.
But, well, it was so nice to meet you all.
Yes.
Yes. Glad you popped in.
Nice to
Safe
Had
journey.
a break from her studies.
Yes.
Yes.
We all need that.
And what were your names?
I'm Wendy. This is my husband, John.
Hey,
John and Wendy. Awesome. Wes, Nina, Stephen,
Terry.
and then Caitlin.
That was
And that's my
Caitlin.
daughter back there, Eliana.
Our long-suffering children. They have to sit with us in every meeting we go to, and they're very used to it, though. So,
Very good. One of the perks of homeschooling.
yes.
Yes, it is.
absolutely.
Yeah, my dogs are in the middle of the year, so.
Yep.
And we're hoping that that's where they want to go. That's the kind of teaching they give you over in Oxford too. It's a very different style of teaching, and it's so amazing. Please go.
Go.
I definitely want to.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, all the stars align. Something would have to stop her at this point. So.
I feel you. It's a beautiful
Nice
place.
meeting everybody.
Yes, you as
Nice
well.
meeting you. Yeah. Have a great
Yes.
night.
Thanks.
Where did Caitlin go?
I think she had a phone call.
Oh, okay. Talk to her publisher for her book tour.
She has people.
Your sales have gone up.
Have your people call my people.
All right.
All right.
Where were we?
Where were we? We were with Beowulf. So, as you read Beowulf, you're going to come to little clues that make you think, oh, I know where he got that. Okay, I know what we're doing here. And we know that there are archetypes throughout literature that are hard and true facts in our unconscious. And I was talking about Carl Jung. And oh my gosh. I mean, I just cannot stop talking about his book on archetypes. It is like Jordan Peterson and C.S. Lewis wrote a book together. If you took it and said, here you go. It's the beautiful prose of literature of Lewis, but it is the concise, precise language of a Jordan Peterson too. It's like, not that Lewis isn't precise as well. Okay, so we arrive on the scene, and where are we in the story? Where does the story take place? Lo, the glory of the kings of the people of the Spear Danes, in the days of old we have heard tell, how those princes did deeds of valor, the oft-skilled Skeffing robbed the host of foemen, many peoples of the seats where they drank their mead, laid fear upon men, he who first was found forlorn, comfort for that he lived to know, mighty grew under heaven, throve in the honor, until all that dwelt nigh about, over the sea where the whales ride, must hearken to him, and yield him tribute. A good king was he. It's pretty good stuff. It's pretty good. It's lyrical. It flows. It's awesome. Spear Danes. We're talking about Denmark, is where we're talking about. Scandinavia is where this takes place. So we're introduced to a king who has a son. I mean, anybody singing archetypes there? A king who has a son. We're introducing a story. Here's a father who has a son. Okay.
Did the king die? Was it a Disney movie?
And his son's name was Beowulf. Beowulf had 3 sons. And the last son, is the one we wind up meeting when we meet Beowulf. Hrothgar is, let me see what is, the half-Dane, Hrothgar. So, in Old English, they like to put the H's and the R's together and the W's and the R's together. So you get Hrothgar, Hagrunting, Rekkas. And Stephen's heard me use the word overhued. And that comes from this poem. So we have this land, and we have a king, and he has sons. And let's see here. Where can we read this? To him was an heir afterwards born, a young child in his courts, whom God sent for the comfort of the people. So there's an heir that has a promise that he's going to comfort the people. Perceiving the dire need which they long while endured, aforetime without a prince. To him, therefore, the Lord of life, who rules in glory, granted honor among men. Baal was renowned, and far wide his glory sprang, the heir to sealed in sealed land. Thus doth a young man bring it to good. Dang it. Thus doeth a young man bring it to pass with good deeds and gallant gifts, while he dwells in his father's bosom, that after in his age there cleave to him loyal knights of his table, and the people stand by him when war comes. So, Baal is the son that was promised. He comes and he has people who, because of his values, because of his great attributes and deeds, he has men who will fight for him. He has knights of his round table, if we could say that. And I thought this was interesting. There at the haven stood the ringed, proud, ice-hung, eager to be gone, the prince's bark. They laid their beloved king, giver of rings, in the bosom of many ships, in the glory by the mast. There were many precious things and treasures brought from regions far away. He was the giver of rings. I just couldn't help but think of Sauron, the giver of rings, you know. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but he's the giver of rings. And there's something about the act of giving someone a ring. It signifies something. When you give, it signifies some sort of covenant to give someone a ring, some sort of allegiance in that. So, then moreover, high above his head, they set a golden standard and gave him to the ocean. Let the sea bear him. So a golden standard. So a standard is a flag. It's this symbol that everyone knows who it is. It's the standard. It's what's raised that everyone can see. They set a gold standard. Now, what's interesting here is this is a little hidden Easter egg that we're going to find out a little bit later on where this golden standard winds up. So you hear it here, and it's sort of like a cannon fired. You're like, why did he mention? He's just mentioning all these nice things, but this is actually going to be part of the story later on. So we find that Hrothgar is the last king. Not Hrothgar. He died, but Hrothgar is the last king. And he wanted to create a house because it says here, thereafter was the fortune in war vouchsafed to Hrothgar in glory and battle, that the vassals, Lord,
Okay.
of his own kindred hearkened willingly unto him. The numbers of his young warriors grew to a mighty company of men. David's mighty men, maybe. Then it came into his heart that he would command men to fashion a hall, a mansion, a mightier house for their mead drinking than the children of men have ever known. And therein he apportioned all things to young and old, such as God had granted him, save the people's land and the lives of men. Listen to this line. Then I have heard that far and wide to many a kindred on this middle earth was the work proclaimed. What? Middle earth.
Now, is it translated by Tolkien to
Yes.
that because of that?
We
Or-
can look at the
Does that
Haney
actually
version,
carry through?
and you can look at the Haney's version. You can actually see what the word is if you want to find out if it's the actual translation.
I think I actually have that pulled up.
But he translated it to Middle Earth. So
Does yours have lines numbered?
Yes.
mine does not.
Okay.
Yeah. 65.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, above 65.
65.
It's right above 65. It's like 3 lines up above 65. So
The forces of war favored Hrothgar. Friends and kinsmen flocked to his ranks. Young followers, a force that grew to a mighty army. So his mind turned to hall building. He handed down orders for men to work on a great mead hall, meant to be a wonder of the world forever. It would be his throne room, and there he would dispense his God-given goods to young and old, but not the common land or people's lives. Far and wide through the world I have heard orders for work to adorn the walls that were sent many people, and soon it stood there, finished and ready, in full view, the Hall of Halls. Pharaoh was the name. It didn't say it. He didn't mention Middle Earth.
Yeah.
he didn't mention Middle Earth.
No.
What's
the equivalent of that?
He's not Tolkien.
He's not Tolkien. So if you're looking here for that, let's see. So it would be at 65 when that was mentioned.
After Mead Hall? Or
So it says
Yeah, that's
dwelling of men. I have heard 65 the fortunes. Well, it's not going to be exactly right because he's going to switch some things around in his translation.
Yeah, then it goes on to talk about.
I think he meant to be a wonder of the world forever. So he just translated it to world.
Okay.
So
Through the world.
through the world, yeah. So and then Tolkien says Middle Earth, which is probably more the right. It's probably closer to the translation of what it actually was Middle Earth.
Kind of probably all they knew at the time anyways.
Well, if you think about cosmology
Yeah.
in the medieval times, it would have been the Middle Earth because you would have had the ether and the heavens, and then Earth, and you would have the underworld.
Yeah.
So Middle Earth would have been.
In the Seamus Haney, the Old English, they're on the opposite page. I can't read it.
Oh, it actually-
looks like Ward Mind. Would that be Middle Earth?
Midgard. If you look, I think there's maybe that's what it is. Midgard, Geard, Maybe that's it.
Well, guard would be garden, which would be earth.
Ah, yeah, middle garden.
Midden is middle.
Oh.
I mean,
Midden is yeah. So
is this German?
no, it would be. This is Old English, which would come from the Norse.
Well, Norse would be midden. Is Norwegian is
And guard is garden, so
Middens.
middle garden. So he would Middle Earth actually is a more direct translation. And Seamus Haney goes, well, Middle Earth is the world, and so he puts it the world so that we understand and we don't have to stop and think about it. But if you know the Beowulfian scholar says Middle Earth, that makes some sense. Okay, so they devise the name. Herot.
That's the name of the hall.
That's the name of the hall. He vowed his belied not, the rings he dealt, and the treasures of the feast. So he's handing out rings too. So Hrothgar is handing out rings at the feast. But he also says that there was a father-daughter spouse. There was a feud that was awakened, and you have a lot of interesting things that come up here. Now, I think this is amazing to have, and it makes sense for the literature. But in this book, this is why I don't necessarily understand the 13th Warrior take on it, is there was a sound of the harp and the singing of the minstrels, and this is on near 75. There spake he that the knowledge to unfold from far off days, the first beginnings of men, tell how the Almighty wrought the earth and the veil of bright loveliness that the water encircles, and how triumphant he set the radiance of the sun and the moon as light for the dwellers of the land, and adorned the regions of the world with boughs and with leaves. Life, too, he devised for every kind that moves and lives. Well, that's just creation story. That's a re-articulation of the creation story. So you're starting a great epic poem. You quote the great epic creation story of the beginning. That is the song of the Great Hall. This is what's happening in the Great Hall. They're actually singing praises to God. They created the Great Hall to worship God. That was the purpose, for them to come in, have jubilation, and praise God. That's amazing. And this poem has been passed down for generations and millennia and millennia. And that was the fundamental purpose of Herot. He wrote.
That's very cool. I mean, we know everybody came from Noah, so the story is split into his three sons. So this area, I guess, would be those people passing on that story. So that's very cool.
Now, Stephen is going to love this. When I read this, I was like just shaking my head. I was like, come on. Even thus did the men of that company live in the mirth and happiness, until one began to work deeds of wrong, a fiend of hell. Grendel was that grim creature called the ill-famed haunter of the marches of the land, who keeps the moors and the fastness of the fens. The unhappy one inhabited long while the troll-kind's home. For the Maker had proscribed him with the race of Cain. That bloodshed, for that Cain slew Abel, the eternal Lord avenged. No joy had he of that violent deed, but God drove him for that crime far from mankind. Of him all evil broods were born, ogres, goblins, haunting shapes of hell, the giants too, that long time warred with God, for that he gave them their reward.
I mean, how do you get past it?
What?
It happens in every
It's the capital N word, Nephilim.
Nephilim. Yeah,
There it is.
it plays out.
So we go from, here's what we go from setting the scene. Okay, here's the lineage of what's going on. Here's the purpose of the people to praise God. We go creation story. You missed it.
I know, I'm sorry.
He says Middle Earth.
He says it?
Yes, he says the word Middle Earth. And Nina confirmed Midden, what is it? Middengard? Middengard means Middle Earth, Middle Garden. So
That's good to know. Tolkien, you just on the nose with that one.
because he was a Beowulfian scholar.
Right.
So now we go from that to the creation story, and then we go to no one skips over Genesis 6. Like the author goes right into Genesis 6.
Cain slaying Abel, and then into Genesis 6. Yeah.
Sin allowed for fallen things to come down. The Grendel, which
what does that
the unhappy one.
Well, if you're
Or as Lewis would call him in the Ransom trilogy, the bent one. The bent one. And you go, okay. The troll's kind's home. The Maker had proscribed him with the race of Cain. You love your father, the devil.
Yeah.
The seed. We're getting it. So I know this seems tedious, but get this. We start out with the lineage of men and how we got to the great Hrothgar. This great lineage we get from the lineage of men. And what were the men doing? The lineage of men, they were praising God and giving thanks to God. Okay? Who is their nemesis? From the seed. Another lineage.
Yeah.
He just gave us another lineage from the seed of Cain. When Jesus looks at the Pharisees and you rub your father, the devil.
The seed of the serpent.
The seed of the serpent.
Brood of vipers.
The brood of vipers.
Yeah.
So we see that again coming through here. It is really hard once Stephen and I begin to pull on that thread of wait, Queen Jadis, she's a divine being and she's the offspring of a divine being and a giant and a demon. That sounds like the Nephilim.
Yeah.
Wait, what? We've been pulling that thread and it keeps popping up in literature.
Dismiss it.
And you can't just skip over it as Christians. We don't need, because it's here. So the antagonist in the story, we got his lineage too. And it's a long distinguished lineage from the seed of Cain, which is the birth of sin. So what are we facing here? We are facing the greatest evil
Ever.
that steals all the joy of God and of man away. It steals the joy of God away from man. And it is sin. And it's chaos. And it's the unknown. And so we are going to face Grendel, the seed of the serpent, the unhappy one. And that's going to be the antagonist. We still don't know who the protagonist is yet, but we know that we have the lineage of men leading up to it, the lineage of, now we have Grendel. So we've been introduced to our villain.
And he has a lifespan too, because it would be pre-flood. So you got like 1,000 years of history to tell with this.
Yeah.
This is very, very interesting.
And what you said there is actually very important, because you said that he has a lifespan.
Yeah.
Okay. Then Grendel went forth when night was come to spy on that lofty house, to see how the ring-danes after the ale drinking had ordered their abode in it. And he found therein the lordly company after their feasting sleeping. Sorrow they knew not, the unhappy fate of men. Ooh. Sorrow they knew not, the unhappy fate of men. I don't know what to do with that. That's interesting. The accursed thing, ravenous and grim, swift was ready. 30 nights he seized upon their couch. Thence back he got with him, gloating over his prey. Far homeward with his glut of murder to seek his lairs. Sorry. It was to seek his lairs. I was like, why? Usually lair is singular. It threw me.
Catch which line are we on? Sorry.
100.
Thanks.
Thereafter the dawn, with the first light of day, was Grendel's strength in battle made plain to men. Then was weeping after feasting unpraised, a mighty cry at morn. The glorious king, the prince proven of old, joyless sat. His stout, valiant heart suffered and sorrow endured for his nights. When men had scanned the footprints of that foe, that demon cursed, too bitter was the strife, too dire and too weary to endure. No longer was it the space then, but one night ere he wrought again, cruel murders more, grieved not for them, his deeds and enmity wrong, deep was he therein. So he shows up, and he doesn't know if he can do it yet. He's not confident in his abilities. Grendel says he came to spy upon that lofty house. He's not sure. He's doing a test run.
Case of the joint.
He's casing the joint. But after he sees these guys are passed out. Like, why was I afraid of all these men? Why was I afraid? Like, God's not protecting them. He sees 30 knights. And I'm thinking here, he talks about that it was the joy, that it was the sorrow they knew not, the unhappy fate of men. So are we saying here that we require suffering to actually find joy? And that if we don't have suffering, then we don't have joy? And maybe Grendel was necessary to find the joy that was required? Because it says, the glorious king, the prince proven of old, joyless sat, and his heart suffered and endured sorrow for his knights. Is that what we're saying? Are we trying to make sense? Would a world even be flourishing if there was no sorrow, no suffering? Would there be such a thing as flourishing?
No, I don't think so.
I think the author's poking at that question. But you need a villain worthy of courage. You need a villain worthy of courage. Because if you don't have a villain worthy of courage and you defeat it, there's no great victory. There was no great struggle. There was no great learning. There was no great breaking and rebirthing. And the hero's trial doesn't matter. Being broken down and being reborn, it doesn't matter.
Margaret Atwood, she wrote a bunch of famous books. I couldn't tell you ones off the top of my head, but she's one of those, what's his name who wrote the Scarlet Letter?
Nathaniel Hawthorne.
Okay, she wrote books like that. So if I said them, you would know them, but I don't remember. But she has a master class, and she talks about writing a novel, and it goes back to those things. Here's the ingredients you need to write a best-selling novel, and here's why you do it. And she says that one of her tips is always write your villain first, because he's going to make your hero who he is. So that's her biggest thing. Yeah. I was going to mention it earlier, but then you said it just then, and I was like, I've got to say this because yeah, it's good stuff.
And you do, because you have to know what you're facing, right? You have to know. Now, sometimes, so what the author did here was he brought the joy and the linen. He brought up man's great conquest. And then, so man's looking pretty good. Then he brings the villain up, and you're like, oh, the men's conquest to this point have been nothing in order to face something like this. Something can come in and just take 30 nights and just some ungodly, unholy thing. Something so adverse to what you are and what you praise and what you worship. Something that is profane.
That's the word.
Yeah, it's... This is why we study this, because we get a look at the enemy. We've articulated it. We've taken what, and Lewis does this, what is the greatest villain that I can create, and let's see if I can defeat it. Right? So what is a great villain? Let's have him go all the way back and have his lineage back to the seed of Cain. Well, sin lay at your doorstep.
It's like crouching.
Yeah.
Lion.
And so it goes all the way back. So this guy is not only a great villain in his own, he has been created to be a great villain. He has been born and bred to become this great villain. Thereafter, not far to seek was the man who else more remote sought him his couch and a bed among lesser chambers. So the king right here, he can't. And I think they talk about this in the New Testament. You hear, is it Rachel crying for her children and she can't be comforted?
Yeah.
Like there's no amount of weeping that's going to retrieve, because Grendel comes back again.
That's when Herod was. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
He wrought again cruel murders more, and grieved them not.
Very interesting.
His deeds and enmity and wrong too deep was he therein. He can't stop now. Now Grendel can't even stop. So if you look at the very beginning, when Grendel actually starts to spy, he didn't know if he was going to do it. He made a conscious choice to take. And when he did, now he can't stop.
Wow.
So is there free will even among the Nephilim?
Guess so.
Has to be.
Conscious.
Thereafter, he who escaped the foe kept him more distant and safe. So the people who actually survived, they began to stray further and further from the house of God. Because there's danger in the house of God. And so they begin to stray further and further and further. And so what ends up happening is that so it was made known to men and revealed to the children of mankind, sadly, in songs that Grendel strove a while with Hrothgar, wrought hate and malice and evil deeds and enmity for many a year, a strife unceasing. Truce he would not have with any man of the Danish host, nor would withhold his deadly cruelty, nor accept terms of payment. And there was no cause any of the counselors took for the golden recompense from the slayer's hand. Nay, the fierce killer pursued them still, both knights and young, a dark shadow of death. Raphaim? The shadow?
Shade.
The shade?
Shade.
Yeah.
Guys from the underworld.
Lurking, lying in wait. What's in the dark? The unknown. The uncertainty. The unknown. Well, this. It's not the unknown. It's the unknown known. That was good. Lurking, lying in wait in long night, keeping the misty moors. When we think of the moors, do you ever think of anything good being out on the moors at night? It's always treachery. It's the hound of the Baskersville, the Baskersville. It's nothing good is on the moors at night with the fog and because you don't know where, if you make the wrong step on the moors. Yeah. You're walking, take the wrong step, and on the moors you're done. Now, where do we see the moors in Lord of the Rings?
Is that the first?
Mordor.
Yeah.
The bog.
The bog in Mordor, right? When I'm reading this, lurking, lying in wait, in long night, keeping the misty moors, I'm thinking, that scene goes through my head of the bogs of Mordor, and I'm going, okay.
Mine says dark death shadow, which is a very interesting term.
Dark
death shadow. That really defines the shades. Wow.
Men knew not whether sorcerers of hell in their wanderings roam. The unknown. Utter, uncontrollable chaos. And you can't even go to the house of God. You can't even congregate to even formulate a plan. He's so devious. Thus many a deed of evil, that foe of men stalking dreadfully alone, did often work many grievous outrage. Now, did you also notice, it's not like they didn't try to bargain with him. A truce could not be had by any man of a Danish host. Like, Grendel's like, no. Wait, so they must have had some form of communication because he wouldn't accept payment. He wouldn't have a truce. He was unyielding. He was an unconditional surrender, if you will, in war. There aren't any conditions for surrender? Nope. If you surrender, you're dead. Many grievous outrage in Heorot's hall, bright with gems and dark nights he dwelt. Never he might approach the precious throne of grace in the presence of God, nor did he know his will. Never might he approach the precious throne of grace in the presence of God, nor did he know his will. That was the great torment of Skilding's Lord, anguish of heart. Many a mighty one sat oft communing, counseling. They took it with it where the best stout-hearted men to do against the dire terrors. At times they vowed sacrifices to idols in their heathen tabernacles. In prayers they implored the slayer of souls to afford them help against the suffering of the people. Well, God's not helping us out, so let's go look at the heathens. But it also says here that he can't approach the throne of grace in God's presence.
He's the Lord's outcast.
Grendel has a limited knowledge, and he has limited power. The author's letting you know. That was in parentheses. That was parenthetical citation. Psst. He don't know everything. he has a weakness.
That's good.
As every great villain does, they have a weakness. Such was their want that the hope of heathens, they were mindful in their hearts of hell, nor knew they the Creator, the judge of deeds, nor had heard the Lord God, nor verily had learned to praise the guardian of heavens and the King of glory. What awesome praise that the author is giving to God in this book. Woe shall be to him that through fiendish malice shall thrust down his soul into the fire's embrace, to look for no comfort, in no wise to change his lot. Blessed shall he be that may after his death day go unto the Lord and seek peace in the bosom of the Father.
That is remarkable.
Somebody wrote this in early AD.
500.
Yeah, it's we don't know. It's somewhere in before the first 1,000. This is amazing literature, the imagery, the depth to it. And he's already saying that woe to him shall be the fiendish malice thrust down his souls into the fire's embrace. He's basically saying Grendel's going to get his comeuppance. Yeah. You'll find your rest in the bosom of the Father. Regardless of what Grendel does, your job is to tell the truth and not be complicit to the lie. Just live.
I love this version. It says, but blessed is he who after death can approach the Lord and find friendship in the Father's embrace. It's like, that's crazy.
Even thus over the sorrows of time did the son of Halfdane brood unceasingly, nor could that wise prince put aside his grief. Too strong was the strife, too dire and too weary to endure, that he had come upon the folk, torment fierce and cruel, that they needs must bear the greatest of miseries that came by night. Of Grendel's deeds, the knight of Hygelac, steamed among the Geats, heard in his home afar, that in the day of man's life there might be the strongest of mankind was he, noble and of stature beyond a man's measure. Well, now we're getting introduced to the hero. Heard in his home afar. Into the unknown, anyone? Into the, call to adventure?
I finally watched Frozen 2 like 2 weeks ago. So I finally am like up to date on
What'd you
references.
think?
It was good. It wasn't my favorite, but it was okay.
But a couple of really funny scenes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There were some funny.
Olaf in the 80s video.
That was awesome.
That was awesome.
The kids are like,
Samantha, when he's like calling for Samantha, he's like, let's call her Samantha. It's like the wind. He names the wind Samantha. I thought that was so funny.
Samantha. Samantha?
I thought that was funny.
What was I incorrect?
No, you're correct. You're correct.
Someday I may watch them. We haven't seen either Frozen yet.
They're good.
They're great. They're good.
The first one especially. The second
First
one
good.
is...
Yeah, they're both have good parts in them for sure.
Second one has funny parts in it.
I would say they're both worthy of being watched.
Yeah.
Only if Rambo's in it.
Well, he makes an appearance, but it's not very long.
Who?
Rambo.
Rambo. Isn't Rambo in every movie?
It's like Chuck Norris. My BB gun.
He bade men prepare him for a good craft upon the waves, saying that over the waters where the swan rides, he would seek the warrior king. The prince renowned, since he had need of men. With the voyage, little fault did wise men find. Dear though he were to them, they encouraged his valiant heart, and they observed the omens. So here we have the hero-savior archetype coming up. So now we're being introduced to the hero. Champion of the peoples of the Geats, that good man had chosen from the boldest that he could find. 15 in all, they sought now their timbered ships, while that warrior, skilled in the ways of the sea, led them to the margins of the land. Time passed on. Afloat upon the waves was a boat beneath the cliffs. Eagerly the warrior mounted the prow, and the streaming sea swirled upon the sand. Men-at-arms bore the bosom of the ship with their bright harness, their cunning gear of war. Then, men on a glad voyage, thrust her forth with the well-jointed timbers. Over the waves of the deep she sped by the wind, sailed with foam at the throat like most like unto a bird, until the due hour upon the second day, her curved beak was made such a way that those sailors saw the land, and the cliffs beside the ocean gleaming, and the sheer headlands and capes thrust far to sea. I mean, it's just beautiful. The language is just beautiful. Then for that sailing ship the journey was an end. Thence the men of wind-loving folk climbed swiftly upon the beach and made fast the sea-borne timbers of their ship. Their mail shirts they shook, and their raiment of war. They gave thanks to God that the passage of the waves had been made easy for them. Men of God. All right, so the hero gives praise to God. So he is the opposite of Grendel, and he is very similar to Hrothgar and his mighty men. All right, so we get into they're going to go meet the king, and they land on the shore, and the guy says, "Hey, I can tell you guys mean business. You don't have a passport. What are you guys doing here?" And he says, "Oh, I heard you guys need some help, and I have incredible strength, and there's actually nobody stronger than me in my land. So I've come to help out. Can I go talk to your king?" He and my dad were good. He and my dad or my grandfather, they were good buddies, and until some things happened. So I'd like to rekindle that relationship, and so that's kind of where we'll pick up next time on the relationship that goes forward. And there are so many good things in this. Especially at the end, it just gets so good at the end too. You get to see the rise and fall of Beowulf, and you get to see. There's a term that you guys won't hear here, but there's a concept here, and there's a concept, and you'll see it actually in the Herot, the church. They were asleep, drunk. They had drank ale. They had praised God. They had no sorrow. They were overconfident. And so there's a concept called overhued. That's the Old English word for overconfidence. And Reka is W-R-E-C-C-A, is the flawed hero. So going forward, recognize that all the heroes in this story are flawed, because all the heroes in our story are flawed as well. And we're flawed mainly because of our overconfidence once we become a hero. And so that's
22.
Yeah, it is. And which is why the more I've been thinking about the resurrection, the more we're thinking about Easter coming forward, and the more God's saying that I don't want your strength, I want your weakness. It's actually our weakness. It's our weakness that gets to be saved, not our strength. He saves us. He saves our weakness. And that's the thing that actually brings us close. The thing that we're trying to get rid of now, the things, even like our like people, we're going for, how can we make the body live forever?
Yeah.
It's like, no, God, that's even that weak part of us. That's what God wants. He wants our weakness so He can be made strong. And it's just an interesting thing there. So it is, the archetypes in here are so solid, that it's no wonder this has lasted 2,000 years.
So we don't know. Long time.
It's millennia, at least a millennia.
Yeah.
And you can see why Tolkien was so drawn to it, I think. Just even the language of it, just the imagery and the language, and like, oh man, Grendel is a bad dude. Just, he has no compassion on just slaughtering people. Which, if he's from the seed of Cain and he's an ogre in that, then we're talking about some sort of fleshly articulated demonic divine being. We're not talking about a human who's possessed in a sense.
Yeah.
We're talking about a descendant of demons, in a sense.
Yep.
And so, how does man match up with an actual physical,
Something more
articulated,
intelligent as well.
yes,
Yeah.
who had been in the presence of God, who knows some things,
Yeah.
and has more
Unfair.
power,
It's an unfair fight.
or is it? Or is it?
True.
All right, so I can't believe how excited I am about going through this.
I'm
I'm
excited.
I'm intrigued.
So,
I think I was supposed to read this in high school, but I never read it. So
all right, so thoughts as we went through it. Anybody have any thoughts about? Were you surprised? So are you surprised you like it?
yeah, that drew me in pretty quick. Once you helped me make that connection, I was like, oh, okay.
I think you could have read one page of this and known that Tolkien would be all about it. I think just based on reading The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, you can just so see how influenced he was by this. Like, really, really see that.
I'm kind of torn on translations now.
The one you were reading just now was this one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I did the same thing when I first started reading the first page of this one. I actually myself said, "What have I done? What have I done to myself? What have I done to the
He
the
did
team?"
say that last week.
I said it.
What did I do to them? Yeah.
And so I got the Seamus Haney when I started reading it, and I went back to Tolkien. And when I went back, second page, I was like, "Oh, all right, we're in.
Okay.
This is good." And then it just kind of.
I feel like I might need that. I just need to read a little bit of the other one, and then it'll start coming.
It's actually been kind of helpful being able to articulate it.
Trey and I got the Seamus Haney one on the book.
You do?
The audio version.
Oh.
So listen to that. And make,
I feel
get
like
the whole gist of the story.
I would really like to do
It's
that.
on Audible as well.
I would really, yeah, I'd like to do that. That's what
I think that would be a good idea, and that's also why I read it out,
Yeah.
so that we could get into the cadence of the speech and the way that they write, and then sometimes when you hear it, you're hearing it and you're reading it.
Yeah. That's
So
good.
Good stuff. I'm sad that Randy wasn't here because he would be all over it.
he
He would be all over it.
he would be.
He's read this already, right, himself? Or no?
Oh, I hope.
I think
But
he
but you know
has.
what? I don't know. I don't know
I think
because.
he has, but maybe not.
But here's the thing: I don't know that Randy's read a lot of literature in the sense of
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I've been doing basically my
Yeah.
entire life is reading literature. So
Yeah, he might not have, but he would like it if he did.
yeah, I don't know if he likes. I see Randy more of a NIV guy,
Okay.
even though he does know more Greek and Hebrew than I do. So I'll give him that. So.
He does love most of Tolkien's stuff, right? He loves Lord of the Rings. He
Yeah.
loves that. The Middle Earth.
If he ever listens to this, he's gonna be peeved.
He asked me what I
You're
thought.
reading?
Yeah.
Oh, he has read it.
So
He asked me what I thought about it, and it's like, well, I'm not really sure yet. He goes, that's kind of the way I was, kind of, when I read through it, kind of, spinning around. Like, what have I done?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited.
If you have, so this is why I thought we could tackle this right now. We have covered so much ground in literature in the last 2 years that the foundations upon which we sit have prepared us to take on something like this and glean from this because of all the stuff that all the foundations of the archetypes and transposition and all the stuff. This is now you go, oh.
I think if we would have read this when I first started coming here
Oh,
years
no.
ago, I would have never came back.
I'd be quiet over here too.
It's crazy though. It really is true. It's constantly improving. It's crazy the growth we've seen within the group, just the group in itself, collectively, with what we've been able to articulate with each next thing we read. It's just been getting better. I feel like if we were to even go back and read something we read at the beginning, at least for me, we would pull out all brand new stuff.
Well, I want to go back and read Leaf by Niggle again.
Yeah,
And I've skipped out on half of this too, so
Leaf by Niggle is
that's a good book.
That's definitely my favorite Tolkien that we've ever read.
Even I tear up just thinking about that book. It just
I
told you my book. I want to frame it now because I didn't know what it was about before we started reading it, and I was working on oil painting, and so it has paint marks in the book from me accidentally, and I was like, oh man, I just got oil paint, and now it's like the most perfect. I don't want to mess it up. Like I want to keep the oil paint in there forever. It's like such a funny thing how that worked out like that.
I was thinking of film ideas the whole time I was reading it. I could not. I was thinking visuals. So
It'd make a great movie.
it would. Yeah.
All right. That's all we have for tonight. So this has been the first reading and introduction into Beowulf in VFF. Further up.
Further in.